That light at the end of the tunnel for metals is quite bright. You're listening to Kitco Roundtable. I'm your host, Michael McCrae. Kitco correspondent Paul Harris is back. How you doing, Paul?
Hey, Michael. Very well, thank you. How's things?
And I first interviewed this guest back in the spring, and I was looking forward to getting him back ever since. He is CEO of Maple Gold Mines and previously held executive roles with Robert Friedland's Ivanhoe. It's Matthew Hornor. Matthew, welcome to Kitco.
Thank you, and great to see you. Good to see you both.
Matthew, what are you focused on at Maple?
We're trying to build the next big gold camp in Canada, and specifically the Abitibi. Partnered with Agnico Eagle on a currently 3 million ounce resource package that we're building in significant ways across the board. So that's our focus, high level.
We want to have a further discussion because Agnico Eagle has been taking a little bit of the headlines in mining for 2022. But before we start, let's do a little bit of macro. And I think I've been failing to do this in the past, but I'm going to do it off the top here. We're going to timestamp this. This is at 4:15 p.m. Eastern time. And it's just 10 days away from Christmas, guys. Just 10 days away from Christmas. Let's turn to macro. Metals and markets started the week off strong, rallying off the tamer than expected U.S. inflation report released Tuesday. Gold surged to a 5-month high. Silver 7-month high right after the report's release. In a presser after the CPI release, Fed Chair Powell maintained a hawkish tone. The Fed also announced an interest rate hike of 0.5%. As of this recording on Thursday, gold has fallen back about $40 to $17.80 on profit taking and also tempered expectations. Copper prices were also up this week on the good inflation news. However, the copper market is tempered by ongoing China concerns. China appears to have lifted its COVID-0 policy, but the effect on the country is still uncertain. Vaccination rates in China are relatively low. Media reports of the populace is that it is still anxious about the pandemic. China's exit from COVID looks like it'll be delayed, as well as messy and potentially destabilizing. And last checked, oil is still looking good. WTI crude is in the mid-70s range. Hey, Paul, what were the mining headlines?
Well, the fall of the political turmoil in Peru continues after Pedro Castillo was removed from office as president last week for attempting to dissolve Congress and rule by decree. He's from a rural background, and his supporters in rural areas are calling for early elections and protesting. They've been blocking roads up and down the country, which is starting to threaten to impact copper production and shipments, such as at MNG's Las Bambas mine, where apparently it is pretty much full up of copper concentrate and needs to ship some soon. Otherwise, production could be impacted. Newly installed President Dina Boluarte said there could be elections before Christmas. Sticking with copper and political risk, First Quantum Minerals did not sign a contract with the government of Panama for the Cobre Panama copper mine last night. The company said the two sides are close, but the necessary legal protections on termination, stability, and transition arrangements could not be agreed upon. The government previously said that if an agreement with First Quantum is not reached, it would pursue an alternative path forward for the operation of the mine. Bloomberg reported this afternoon that the government has indeed retained a financial advisor to do so. Cobre Panama produced more than 300,000 tons of copper last year. Something more positive, Eldorado Gold entered into a 680 million euro project financing facility for the development of the Skouries project in northern Greece with National Bank of Greece and Piraeus Bank. The 7-year facility will provide 80% of the expected future funding required to complete the project, which is about half built. The remaining 20% is expected to be covered by cash and future cash flow. The company's board approved an investment decision and full restart of construction at Skouries, with first production expected in the second half of 2025. Sticking with financing, Ascot Resources entered into letters of intent for 200 million Canadian in project financing for the construction of its Premier Gold project in British Columbia, comprising a $110 million gold and silver streaming agreement with Sprott Resource Streaming and Royalty, and a 45 million Canadian strategic investment from Peru's Curiapu, and that will see them take a 19.9% interest in Ascot. Finally today, the price of failure. Having failed to close a proposed takeover of Yamana Gold, Goldfield CEO Chris Griffiths has fallen on his sword and stepped down. He will be replaced on an interim basis by Martin Preece.
Matthew, I'd like to bring you back. At the start, I was talking about the good news. You see that gold prices have rebounded quite nicely. We see that oil prices have come off the boil, so that's a good sign in terms of inflation. The markets are kind of looking ahead, and in terms of the Fed should be hopefully kind of stepping off the gas. I was just wondering, what's the mood right now? What is the mood for resource stocks?
I think the risk off trade is winning the day. It has been for the second half of this year, as we've seen starting in the springtime when everyone realized that inflation was going to be a thing. It's starting to improve, I think, a bit. I think people are looking forward to the beginning of 23. We're suffering through, as an industry, the tax loss season at the end of the year. So I think that's something every player in this space goes through and has to live through. No matter what you do nowadays, it seems like you can't get a sustained uplift because people just don't know what is coming next, really. I believe firmly that the start of 23 is going to see a lot of people taking a fresh look at our sector for good reason. The macro story, I think, has never looked better than it does today for all metals, and we can talk about that as you'd like.
Paul?
I want to sort of come in there, if I may, Matthew. It does seem that there's, in some ways, some mixed signals, or perhaps approaching a period of transition. And why do I say that? Because this past week we had Banyan Gold announced a financing which was almost immediately upsized to more than 12 million Canadian and filled. And yet at the same time, we've seen Galway Metals with $7 million Canadian in the bank, basically announcing they're suspending exploration drilling to conserve cash. So we seem to be perhaps on the cusp of something, and perhaps could go better, or perhaps it could get worse.
Before you answer that, Matthew, just some numbers on that, just to add on to what you said, Paul. Warnink, which tracks junior financings, was looking at what they're thinking that they're going to see 2022 come in versus 2021. So I think he said there was a 20% drop in the number of financings, and total dollars raised down 40% right now. So it's looking, except for your Banyans, it's looking pretty starved.
Yeah, and people are financing success of the drill bit more in the last half of the year for sure than they are with any engineering reports or feasibility studies that are going out, because everyone knows that you have to bake into that inflationary impact of the building costs. So that is kind of understandable. So you have to have something quite stellar, and you have to be in a position where you're not having to raise capital right out of the gates, because that's going to always put you offside. We are obviously in a strong capital position at Maple Gold Mines, and our partners are who they are. But I don't disagree, Paul. I mean, that you do have strangely some companies that are doing incredibly well and some that are falling off a bit. Overall, the trend the last 9 months, I would say, has been on the downturn, because people are not knowing what to do next with their capital and kind of sitting on the sidelines. The emperor has been acknowledged by everybody to have no close in the crypto space, I think, finally, as you see more hacking coming in. I think that that's helped the gold story. I think it will continue to help the gold story and the commodity story generally in our industry. And although I'm not anti that space or anti that asset class, I think it is a blip in the history of, look at the whole history of the gold space, just to pick one. This crypto market is a millisecond. So there are a lot of factors at play, but I think going forward, if you have a strong story in a good jurisdiction, as my old boss Robert has said often recently, the focus is going to be to more stable jurisdictions that have proven track record of actually delivering on production. And that's why I think, because it's the inherent risk in any of these stories, I think that's where a lot of the capital is going to start flowing in the new year.
Matt, as you mentioned, you're in a relatively privileged position because of the partner you have at Maple. But for other junior CEOs that don't have that, how difficult is it to really sort of navigate a market like this, where it's difficult to raise money? You don't know if it's going to be there. You don't know if the market's going to fall off the cliff again next year. Yeah. So, and committing to multi-million-dollar drilling program could, if the market doesn't come back, then you're in a real pickle.
Oh yeah. I would be I would have sleepless nights if I didn't have the position that I have with our partners and our treasury, et cetera, because of the uncertainty. And unless you have something that's self-sustaining from an exploration standpoint, you're at risk of the variances of the marketplace. So absolutely, it would be it wouldn't be as happy of a Christmas or Hanukkah if I didn't have all these things that obtained at the maple side. No matter what the share price is doing this week or last week, we had a nice uplift and then something came back down. But the trajectory going forward, I think, is quite strong. But I again, circling back, I think your point is quite right. If you're trying to plan a program and you don't yet have your financing in place, you're going to have to make a lot of hard decisions if you're a CEO of a junior mining company.
Now, Matthew, the biggest deal, the biggest gold deal of the year is going to be that Agnico Eagle Pan American Yamana Gold. I'm calling it now. I don't think anything else is going to happen between now and the new year. Agnico has 12% of your maple. What's the impact upon that deal? Is Agnico going to be busy digesting Yamana for a while? Definitely,
as they were with Kirkland Lake. But they once they announced the deal with Kirkland Lake, they put up a nice map, which I can send to you guys to show the audience, that showed where all the projects that they're located, where all the projects located they're focused on. And they highlighted our joint venture with them in the Abitibi because it is their playground. It's where they've had the best success at production at Malartic, of course, and LaRonde. And they need, I think, to have projects in every stage of the pipeline. And we represent for them what could ultimately be a very large, very important camp and flow of real ounces going into the future for them, which they always need to be generating in Quebec, in the Abitibi. So yes, go ahead.
No, I was just going to chip in that, earlier today I had a call with Joe Mazumdar of Exploration Insights, and for him, the Agnico part of the Yamana deal was the deal of the year. He said, they're laughing all the way to the bank.
Oh, totally.
I cannot say on air what he said about the assets that Pan American got, but he said, Agnico got what they want. It was a great deal for them. Really good.
It was stunning. I mean, these guys are really, really good. I cannot ever say enough nice things about the team at Agnico. We speak to them a number of times a week, and we have done for 2 years. They're phenomenally gifted, smart individuals. They have a policy. They follow the policy and their approach to deals, and that was, I totally agree, was one of the smartest deals of not only the year. You pick multiple year horizon. That I can't think of a better one at the moment. To consolidate that Malartic cash cow is just brilliant, because it's going to be a generational mine from here going forward, given what they're finding in East Goldie and all the exploration success they've had there.
And with East Goldie, they're starting to mine towards you as well, aren't they? So eventually they'll get there.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
To add on to Matthew's point and Paul's point, I was looking at the GDX yesterday, and then I see it's basically even for the year. While AEM or Agnico is up 12% for the year, so it looks like the markets are supportive of that transaction. Let's step back more broadly, Matthew. What do you think the state of play is for M&A more broadly?
Well, as I've mentioned a few weeks ago in the discussions with the Northern Miner and others, we are trying to find some very creative transactions in the M&A world for us. This is because we love our existing projects and we think consolidation is a good idea. It's always at the bottom of the cycle that you get people hopefully to trade at reasonable terms, and on a relative basis, it really doesn't matter if you put on your economics brain or your modeling cap for a second. It doesn't matter if you're both $400 million or $40 million. The relative trade is simply the same. So the M&A space should be picking up. The number of companies have gone from 1,200 to 800 in the junior mining space. We are an area or a sector of the mining space that needs to exist for the larger cap mining companies, kind of like the farm teams that provide the projects to go into the big leagues, or as I like to talk about the biotech firms that prove that their drugs are efficacious after spending all these capitally risky dollars over time, and then the big pharma buys you out. So you need to have that effort by the junior mining groups over time. So I don't know what the magic number is, it 800 or 700 or of companies that always have to be churning and trying to go for broke and hitting these home runs for the bigger companies to take a look at you. But M&A needs to be happening, especially now when you have great projects that not everybody can advance for a number of reasons. And we are taking a very hard look at this, and we have a number of conversations that are ongoing, and maybe we'll pull off something. It has to be very accretive to the Maple Gold shareholders, of course. And it's because we have a solid foundation with our other projects and our partners and cash in the bank already that we would do this, to add to it, to make it more exciting. And I can speak about some more things regarding our project in a minute if we get around to it.
Staying with the M&A theme, just kind of, it reminds me about a year ago, we were talking to investor Michael Gentile, and he said if there's a downside to the Quebec, is that, it's too popular a jurisdiction just because of the tax advantages and the jurisdictional advantages. There just really is a lot of small caps in that, focused on Quebec.
Yeah, I mean, I know Michael quite well, and there's there can be that hazard, I guess, but luckily we're not among those groups. And I think the investment, the field of investors is looking for a name to follow, and if you become the platform that they can follow or feel comfortable following, then you're winning the game. And that's really the objective and the strategy around what we're trying to do. So going forward, but it is a phenomenal place to operate. I mean, as you guys both know, I've operated in many other much less attractive jurisdictions, had success in those in Africa and Mongolia, et cetera, with Robert. And it's understandable why people want to be in Quebec for all the reasons you pointed out, Michael.
You mentioned at the top that you think that gold is going to be performing well. What's your thesis for gold, Matthew?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, or touched upon, the crypto emperor having no clothes. I mean, people are starting to realize that it was interesting for a minute. There will be a couple of names that will survive, but that falling away reminds people why it is that gold is a good store of value. And I think that there are certain inflection points that could be driven by Russia accepting gold for energy, oil, a lot of things that could happen around the edges that could shoot it north rapidly and have it stay there. Just touching on the difference between the crypto and the gold just for a second, which I think has taken a lot of, as we all know, a lot of the wind out of the sail of the gold story over the last few years, because quite frankly, we've never seen this type of inflation in the history of mankind, where you have every country due to the pandemic printing as much cash and currency at the same time. It's never happened, if you think about it. Even the last pandemic didn't happen at the same minute as it's happening today. So And even though that's been the case, you haven't seen the spike in the gold because the dollar just can't fall over quickly for a lot of political reasons, geopolitical reasons, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I think overall, I'd like to be a part of a steady upward trending gold price environment.
Paul.
Visual Capitalist produced a very good graphic the last week or so, looking at showing the inflation rates of all the countries around the world. It's quite eye-opening.
Please send that to me. I love their graphics. They're fantastic.
Will do.
Let's turn to our number of the week. Guest goes first. Matthew, what's your number?
8. 8 is my number of the week. 8 is the number of 2,000 meter drill holes we have approved at 16,000 meters at Douay to test the deeper structures there that I expect to have some quantum leap changes for the company going forward.
Paul, what's your number?
Mine's a little bit bigger, 10 billion. $10 billion US dollars to be exact. And that's the aggregate amount invested to date in Cobre Panama by First Quantum Minerals, a project that's now in jeopardy because they haven't reached an agreement with the government of Panama.
I have another investment number. The number is 350 million. That's 350 million. This week, Avatar, The Way of Water, the sequel to 2009 Avatar, was released. Avatar is James Cameron's film. That was one of the top grossing films of all time. It also had an anti-mining bent, as you two might remember. The sequel cost $350 million to make. Cameron said it needs to be the third or fourth highest grossing film in history just to break even. I'm going to start with you, Paul. Are you going to go see the new Avatar sequel?
If my kids absolutely want to, I will. But I thought the first one was a bit all mouth and no trousers, as they say.
Matthew,
I'll probably watch it on a plane sometime, flying somewhere. If it's
or that, yeah.
I never could get past it when I watched the last Avatar. I always found it overwrought, and something about the makeup just sent me fleeing. That's it for us, Matthew. What's the milestones over the next 12 months at Maple?
Yeah, it's a fun next little while for us. We just put out some quite good results on our Eagle project. I think there are many more to come there in the very near future. And then we're looking to build on as I said earlier, the very deep exploratory holes under Douay, kind of going down to how deep Malartic had some real success and driving very large ounce counts at higher grade. So look over the next 6-12 months to have us increasing significantly in our ounce count and to finding gold in areas that we've not yet brought to light. So very exciting future for us.
You can follow me at Michael McCrae. McCrae is with 2 C's. Paul is at Paul Harris Gold. Matthew, how would you like people to get a hold of you?
Our website is maplegoldmines.com, and I'm M Hornor at maplegoldmines.com.
If you like what you hear, tell a friend. Don't forget to subscribe. On behalf of Paul Harris, Matthew Hornor, and myself, have a pleasant weekend.